The gunshot that tore through the night didn't just split the silence, it split everyone's fate in two. 1 second earlier, life was moving normally, and the next, nothing would ever be the same again. Furman's finger was still on the trigger, Kadir's eyes were frozen in shock, and the echo of a second shot still hung in the darkness like an unanswered question. But the real mystery remained. Who did that second bullet actually hit? And do you think fate can bring even the strongest person to the ground in a single second? Kadir stumbled a step backward. Blood from his chest began dripping onto the dark ground. On Furman's face, anger and fear had merged into one expression. The gun was still in his hand, but his fingers were trembling. For a moment it felt as if even the wind had stopped moving. As Kadir slowly fell to his knees, he never took his eyes off Furman. His lips trembled, but no words came out. It seemed like he had something he desperately wanted to say, yet the words were trapped in his throat. Furman stepped back, panic slowly rising in his eyes. The weight of what he had just done was beginning to settle on his shoulders. Still, as if trying to defend himself, he whispered, I didn't want to do this. Kadir struggled to breathe and forced out a few words. Daikel will never forgive you. That sentence struck Furman like an invisible knife. Because Daikel was his sister, and Furman had convinced himself that everything he had done was for her. But was that really the truth? Do you think Furman was truly trying to protect Daikel, or had jealousy and anger blinded him? Just then, the distant sound of a car engine broke the silence. Furman's eyes widened. Someone was coming. As the headlights cut through the darkness and grew closer, Furman's heartbeat accelerated. He quickly shoved the gun into his pocket and stepped back. Within seconds, the darkness swallowed him completely. The car stopped in front of the mansion. Behind the wheel was Erkan. He was still burning with anger, unable to shake off the argument that had just happened. Kadir's words echoed in his mind. He had said he was going to marry Daikel. The thought had ignited a fire inside Erkan that refused to fade. The moment Erkan stepped out of the car, he noticed a shadow lying on the ground. For a brief second, he froze. Then he ran forward. Kadir! Kadir wasn't moving. Erkan dropped to his knees beside him. The moment he saw the blood spreading across Kadir's chest, his face turned pale. Who did this? Kadir slowly forced his eyes open. His lips trembled. But the word never finished. His head fell to the side. Erkan felt as if his heart had stopped. No, Kadir. If you were in that moment, what would you do? Even if it were your enemy lying there in a pool of blood, would you try to save them? Erkan immediately pulled out his phone. Ambulance. Send an ambulance now. The panic in his voice said everything. Minutes later, the sound of sirens ripped through the night. The paramedics quickly lifted Kadir onto a stretcher while Erkan ran beside them. Will he survive? He asked breathlessly. The doctor glanced quickly at the wound. The bullet is very close to the heart. Those words sent a chill through Erkan. What does that mean? The doctor didn't answer. He simply said, we need to move fast. The ambulance doors slammed shut. For a few seconds, Erkan stood there frozen. Then he made a decision. He jumped back into his car and followed the ambulance. But inside the mansion, no one knew what had happened yet. Daikel was sitting alone in her room, feeling an uneasy weight in her chest. Something felt wrong. Sometimes a person can sense an approaching disaster even before they see it. Do you think that's possible? At that exact moment, her phone began to ring. The caller was Erkan. Daikel hesitated for a few seconds, then finally answered. Erkan. Erkan's voice was shaking on the other end of the phone. Daikel, you need to stay calm. Daikel's heart started racing. What happened? Erkan went silent for a few seconds before speaking again. Tonight, Kadir was shot. There was complete silence on the other side of the line. The color drained from Daikel's face. What did you just say? Erkan's voice sounded strained. They took him to the hospital. The phone nearly slipped from Daikel's hand. No. She suddenly rushed out of her room and ran down the hallway. Her mother saw her and looked confused. Daikel, what happened? But Daikel didn't stop. She only managed to say one sentence as she passed. "Kadir's been shot." Those words exploded inside the mansion like a bomb. Minutes later, the hospital corridor was filled with hurried footsteps and anxious voices. Daikel rushed inside, breathing heavily. Erkan was standing near the wall, his eyes fixed on the floor. She walked straight toward him. "What happened?" Erkan slowly lifted his head. "Furman did it." Daikel's eyes widened. "What?" Erkan nodded. "He pulled a gun, trying to stop him." Daikel stepped back in disbelief. "That's impossible." "But was it really? Do you think Furman was capable of something like this?" Just then, the operating room light turned on. The doctor stepped outside. Everyone in the hallway held their breath. The doctor spoke with a serious expression. "The bullet passed just a few centimeters from the heart." Daikel's heart pounded. "Is he alive?" After a brief pause, the doctor answered. "He's alive for now." Tears began streaming down Daikel's face. But the doctor continued. "However, there was a second bullet." Erkan frowned. "What do you mean?" The doctor took a deep breath. "The second bullet hit someone else." A wave of murmurs spread through the hallway. Daikel froze. "Someone else?" The doctor nodded. "Yes." Erkan immediately asked, "Who?" When the doctor answered, everyone was stunned. "Furman." For a moment, time seemed to stop. Daikel's knees trembled. Erkan stared at the doctor in shock. "What do you mean?" The doctor continued explaining. "The bullet ricocheted. Furman is critically injured." Now think about it. Was this just an accident or a cruel twist of fate? In another room of the hospital, Furman was lying in the intensive care unit, connected to machines. His face was pale, almost lifeless. But suddenly, one of his fingers twitched slightly. Then a single word slipped from his lips. "Daikel." If Furman wakes up, what will he say? Did he really intend to kill Kadir? Or is there a much bigger secret behind all of this? And most importantly, how will this event change the relationship between Erkan, Daikel, and Kadir? Because sometimes a single bullet doesn't just wound a person, it wounds everyone's life. And in this story, nothing is truly over yet. When that single word faded into silence in the hospital corridor, it felt as though everyone's deepest fears had suddenly become visible. On one side were two men suspended between life and death. On the other side were years of tangled emotions, guilt, love, resentment, and unspoken truths. And standing in the middle of it all was Daikel, struggling just to breathe. Because sometimes the deepest wound a person receives doesn't come from an enemy, it comes from their own blood. After hearing the doctor's words, Daikel took a step backward. She felt as if she might collapse if she didn't grab the wall beside her. Furman's name, Kadir being shot, the second bullet that ricocheted and struck him, everything was swirling together in her mind. Her eyes seemed distant, but in reality she was staring straight into her past. She remembered her childhood, her older brother who always protected her, who interfered in everything, who tried to control everything, who sometimes suffocated her but still insisted, "I'm your brother." And now that same brother was lying in intensive care. And once again the reason was a conflict that had begun in her name. Sometimes a doctor's silence is the most terrifying sentence of all, isn't it? Do you think that silence carries hope, or does it slowly prepare a person for the truth they're afraid to hear? When Erkan saw that look on the doctor's face, he clenched his jaw. Guilt was growing inside him. Just a short while ago, he had argued with Kadir. He had been jealous, blinded by anger, and hadn't thought about the consequences of his words. But now the man lying in a pool of blood was that same Kadir. And in the middle of everything, the most painful thing was the look in Daikel's eyes. There wasn't only fear there. There was something else, almost like a silent accusation, a question Erkan could not answer, maybe even a deep disappointment that cut deeper than any words could. After a few minutes, hurried footsteps echoed from the other end of the hospital corridor. Kadir's parents had arrived. His mother's face was completely pale, while his father tried to appear strong, though the panic in his eyes was impossible to hide. His mother looked directly at Daikel, then at Erkan, and finally turned to the doctor. "Where is my son?" What happened to my son? The doctor asked them to stay calm, but in moments like this, is it really possible to stay calm? When a mother hears her child's name spoken in the same breath as death, how could her heart possibly remain steady? A few seconds later, the woman wrapped her arms around Daikel's shoulders and began crying uncontrollably. I saw him this morning, he smiled at me, he told me nothing would happen to him. Daikel froze in that embrace. For the first time, someone else's pain was heavier than her own. Tears quietly ran down her face. Meanwhile, Kadir's father stepped directly in front of Erkan. Tell me what happened. Erkan took a deep breath, but every word felt like it was cutting through his throat. When I arrived at the mansion, Kadir was already on the ground. I found him like that. The doctors say Furman pulled a gun. He pulled a gun? The man's voice turned icy. Was my son in the middle of a war? Erkan didn't answer. The man's voice became even harder. If everything that has happened in this part of the story shocked you as much as it shocked us, remember that even bigger secrets and unexpected twists may soon come to light. In You Are the One I Love, nothing is ever as simple as it first appears, and with every new episode the truth slowly begins to reveal itself. So if you don't want to miss deep analyses like this, new episode predictions, and hidden details within the story, make sure to subscribe to the Series World channel and don't forget to like the video. With your support, we can keep bringing you stronger theories and even more exciting breakdowns in every episode. Now let's come to the most important question we're all wondering about. After everything that happened, who do you think Daikel will trust? Will Erkan truly change, or if Kadir survives, will he be able to win Daikel's heart again? Be sure to write your thoughts in the comments, because we'll be discussing the most interesting theories in the next video.